Before he runs away, please join me in saying thank you to Chef Mario for our great dinner this evening. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly had a good dinner. Did you? All right. So, start munching on your dessert and we'll get going. Now, I'm sure that during your dinner you probably tweeted and updated your Facebook page about your attendance at this conference, and I saw a few people taking a picture of their chicken. Yeah, I saw that. And while your technology is great in keeping you connected with friends and family, I'm going to ask a favor of you. During the sessions of the conference, I'm going to ask you to stay connected with your GMS family and save the technology connections for breaks and when you're in your rooms later on in the evening and you really have something to talk about during the day. So we'll check in with you throughout the conference and keep reminding you to help us out with that. We've selected a staff who will be tweeting and posting on Facebook throughout the weekend, so you, the 2014 scholars, can absorb all the information that will be covered to help you be successful. You're going to hear from several outstanding individuals throughout the weekend, and let me introduce you to a few of them who have joined us for dinner. I have the distinct privilege of getting to work with an extraordinary group of leaders who were once sitting in the seats where you are. And I'm so pleased to start the introductions by recognizing Tommy Preston, who is the GMS Class of 2003 alumnus and president of the GMS Alumni Association. Good evening, Tommy. Dr. Lois Moore, vice president of the GMS Alumni Association and a Californian. Joining us from New York is Sharon Washington, who is president-elect of the GMS Alumni Association. And also with us this evening is Dr. Allison Leggett-Watson, who is immediate past president of the GMS Alumni Association. Frank Wayne is with us this evening, and he's a regional advisor for the Alumni Association GMS Class of 2008. Good evening, Frank. And the GMS program, as you know, provides support for you guys to go through your doctoral degrees. It really is an extraordinary commitment over 10 years of your education, and really, many scholars have taken advantage of that opportunity. And we work very closely with a number of institutions across the country, and we're getting to know some great friends at the University of California, San Francisco. And joining us this evening is Dr. Lamisha Hill, who's the Director of Multicultural Resource Center from UCSF's Office of Diversity and Outreach. Dr. Hill, thank you so much for being with us. To open our speakers this evening, you will hear remarks from Dr. Michael L. Lomax. He is President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Negro College Fund, the nation's largest private provider of scholarships and other educational support to minority students. Before coming to UNCF, Dr. Lomax was president of UNCF member institution Dillard University in New Orleans and a literature professor at UNCF member institutions Morehouse and Spelman Colleges. He also served as chairman of the Fulton County Commission in Atlanta, the first African American elected to that post. Throughout his career, Dr. Lomax has worked to provide educational opportunities for underrepresented Americans. And one of the things that he has achieved along the way is raising over $1 billion in that support. Please join me this evening in giving a warm GMS welcome to Dr. Michael L. Lomax.
Good evening. Wow, that's the quietest you've been all evening. If I'd said give a chant, I didn't say give a chant. I said if I said give a chant. We've been trying to figure out what we call. What do you guys call? What is your? You're not. Are you millennials? You're loud millennials. Okay. You're energetic millennials. All right. So it's great to be here. Every year we have two of these leadership conferences, one in Virginia for all the students who are on the east of the Mississippi River. And then this one used to be in Los Angeles, it's now in San Jose, for all the students west of the Mississippi. I think San Jose is cooler than Virginia. But LA was cooler than San Jose. But we're all glad to be here, aren't we? And I flew in this afternoon into Los Angeles from Boston, where I was last night, and I know you guys are, you're so sophisticated and urbane, and you're accustomed to this. And I saw all the students at the Los Angeles airport. They were so excited, and they were taking pictures in groups, and they didn't know they were being observed. But you have every right, as Larry was pointing out earlier, you have every right to all the feelings that you have about being here. Because you have earned your seat at this table. You've worked very hard. You've overcome a lot of obstacles. You've experienced disappointment and frustration, I'm sure. But you're the kind of people who set big, audacious goals in your life, and you focus on them, and you work relentlessly to achieve them. So I think you have every right to not just celebrate, but to feel that this is absolutely where you belong. And I hope that you get strength and an even greater sense of purpose from this weekend and from meeting all of the other Gates scholars who have done just what you've done, set big goals, worked very hard, and persisted until you achieved them. And then realize that even though you've earned the right to be here, being here also carries with it some responsibilities and maybe even some obligations. Now, one of the speakers that we've been, in the 10 years that I've been doing this, president of UNCF and participating in the West Coast Leadership Conference, we've had a special guest who can't be with us this year, Bill Gates Sr., the father of Bill Gates, who's paying for your scholarship. And, Mr. Gates, who is I don't really think of him as a rock star, but when Mr. Gates would show up at these events, as some of the older GMS folks who are here will tell you, it got kind of crazy. I mean, the new scholars would pull out their cell phones, determined to take a picture, not just of Mr. Gates, but with Mr. Gates. And after a while, we determined that we probably should protect him from the enthusiasm of the scholars. But Mr. Gates really had a special message as well, I think, for the students and the scholars. And it was that the reason why his son and daughter-in-law had created this scholarship program and invested $1,600,000,000 in ensuring that 20,000 of the best and the brightest students of color got the opportunity to have this experience was because they felt that it was important to invest in young people whose communities hadn't always had that level of support. To give our communities a chance to demonstrate that the young people who grow up in our communities may not have all of the same material possessions that other students have, but they have all of the God-given talents and capability to achieve at the very highest level. And when they decided to create this scholarship, it was with a hypothesis. And the hypothesis was that if you remove the financial barrier that stands in the way of the best and the brightest young people in the Latino community, in the African American community, in the Native American community, in the Asian Pacific Islander community, if you remove the financial barrier to college, and you give those students the chance to choose and attend the #1 school that they want to attend, they will do at least as well as more privileged students from other communities. And over the 15, 16 years now almost, and the 18,000 students who have participated in this program, you and all of the other Gates scholars have demonstrated that you won't do just as well as those other students. You'll do better than they do. You'll graduate at 90% rate. You can give me applause for that. Give yourself. You'll do that from some of the most competitive and selective institutions anywhere in the world. You'll choose to major in some of the most difficult, rigorous, and demanding fields of study. And you'll go on to graduate and professional school at rates far greater because you can, and you don't have the financial barrier standing in your way. Now, I probably don't need to say this, but proving that hypothesis has been a great opportunity, not just for Gates scholars, but for the nation. Because what Gates scholars and the Gates Scholarship Program have demonstrated is that so many more young people than have the opportunity, if given the opportunity, will achieve at the highest level. And so for me, when I talk to you, I don't want to make it so heavy that you lose the sense of celebration. But I do want to plant the seed for something that I hope you will consider and allow to grow throughout your lives. And that is that this opportunity is an opportunity that you can help others achieve as well. You don't have to be as rich as Bill and Melinda Gates to be a philanthropist. You don't have to be a billionaire to help others. In fact, you are already young men and women who can be philanthropists to your own community. Right now, it's probably not giving back money, but it's giving dreams to your neighbors and the young people who will now look up to you as role models, as people who are demonstrating what they have the capability to achieve. And that's why it's so important. It's so important that you squeeze every ounce of opportunity out of your Gates Millennium Scholarship. That you do everything that you possibly can in this great experience that you're having, so that you can take all of that experience back to your family and to your community and have it enrich their lives by inspiring others to achieve what you're achieving in yours. I expect that for some of you, you may feel a little guilty even about getting this great scholarship. Because as Larry pointed out, a lot more people wanted it. And a lot more people worked really hard to get it. But they didn't get one of those letters, and you did. But since you did, don't squander any of the opportunities that come with having received that letter. Use it for your own enriching of your own life, but for giving back to your communities, to your families, and to your nation. Yesterday this week, I visited two university campuses. On Tuesday, I gave or maybe it was Wednesday, I guess it was Wednesday, I gave a speech in New York at the City University of New York. If you know anything about, it's called CUNY. Anybody here from New York? Okay. We got a couple. Yeah, that's right. But CUNY, it's one of the great public universities in this country. There are CUNY campuses in all of the boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens. And the City University of New York was originally an open access college. Low price, anybody could go there. And today it's a mixed bag of institutions. Some are highly, Baruch I think is their most exclusive. Have to have about I think 1250 or something on the SAT to get. It's a pretty demanding institution. But they also still have open access. And many of their students don't look like you. They're older. Look like me. Not quite. They don't look that old. No. But they're older. And they work. And they take courses and work. And many of them have families. And many of them didn't have the opportunity to go immediately from high school into a 4-year institution to pursue their dream of a college education. And because life has gotten in the way, even though they still have big dreams and are working very hard to achieve them, generally about 1 in 3, just a little over 30% of the students at CUNY will graduate with a bachelor's degree. Why? Why can't they achieve their dreams like you do? Well, because some of them, many of them, probably close to 50% of them, didn't get great high school and middle school and elementary school educations. So they got a diploma, but when they got to that classroom at CUNY, they wound up taking math courses and science courses and English language arts courses and reading courses that carried no credit because they were remedial or developmental. And some of them struggle to pass that math class or that English language arts class. And because it's a city university with tens of thousands of students, they don't always have the supports that they need. Academic, social, emotional supports. And 2/3 of the students fall by the wayside. And even though it's not a really expensive school, it's not free. And they don't live on a campus. And they've got to get from cross town to that campus, and that costs money. And they've got to eat, and they've got to buy books, and they've got to get technology. And Bill and Melinda Gates aren't covering the costs. So they have to take out loans. And they have to struggle to get grants. And sometimes they don't. And so more of them fall by the wayside. That's not going to happen to Gates scholars. But it shouldn't happen to anybody. So one of the things that I'm counting on you to do is to be philanthropists, to help others, to give them a hand so that they can have the same opportunities that you have. And that's what I talked about at CUNY. I talked about making sure that if kids have to take out loans, we have a better loan programs than we have in this country today, where the interest rates aren't so high and the students don't have to pay them back for the rest of their working lives. So we got to change public policy, because not everybody's going to be a Gates Scholar. Then I left there and I went to a very different kind of institution. I went to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to the Harvard Business School. And last night I was having dinner with the dean of the business school and Governor Duval Patrick, the first African-American governor of Massachusetts, and some business leaders. And we were planning for a conference that Harvard is going to sponsor next June about prosperity. Prosperity. How do we ensure that all Americans benefit from prosperity? Because if you know something about it, yet today, I think it was this morning, a big announcement, 218,000 new jobs created in this country. The unemployment rate went down from 6.9 to 6.8%. The stock market is breaking new barriers almost every day. And so for some Americans, there's real prosperity. There are more millionaires and billionaires in this country than there have ever been in the history of the nation. And for folks with really good educations, particularly in science, technology, engineering, and math, and they get jobs here in San Jose and Palo Alto and San Francisco and Oakland, working for Google and Apple and Facebook and Twitter and Netflix and all those folks. They are living large. But guess what? For the folks who don't get a college education, for the folks who can't take a 4-credit college course because they don't have the preparation, times are really, really tough. So we've got to figure out how to make sure that there's more opportunity in this country, so that more young people who look like you also have futures that look like yours. And I'm going to tell you, that's what I've worked on for the now 45 years that I've been working a job since graduating from university. I'm getting tired. I can't keep doing this. I gotta pass the torch. We need young people, loud, bodacious millennials to step up and take the torch and do the work to make sure that this great nation that has given you so many opportunities can give the same opportunities to more folks who look just like you. So, do your chants, eat every 10 minutes, have a great time, build wonderful relationships, network, meet others, stay in touch, use the social media, tweet, get your selfies. But be serious. This is more than a notion. It's a lifetime job, helping others, being a philanthropist, doing what you can do the way you can do it. Thank you. God bless you.
When we get to my age, you need the other glasses. Okay. So Dr. Lomax talked about giving back and what each of us can do to give back to our communities. And I'm so pleased to dovetail those points into the introduction to the next person who will join us this evening. When she graduated from the University of California, Berkeley in 2009, Meg Roberto was the first in her family to graduate from college. And she took that degree in international political economy. Immediately after graduation, she began her 2-year service as a Teach for America Corps member in the city of Philadelphia. During her time serving over 300 families as a middle school English and math teacher, Meg completed her master's in urban education from the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. Focusing on multicultural identity development, she created service-based learning modules to enhance students' understanding of the world around them and achieved an over 80% mastery of state learning objectives as measured by the state tests. She then joined Teach for America's recruitment team, which sought to find 6,500 teachers like her over 6 months of her year on the staff. There is where she found her passion for working with first-generation Asian Pacific Islander American college students like herself. And she is now at the APIESF, where she is excited for her work as the Director of Programming and Student Affairs. Please join me in a warm welcome to Meg Roberto.
I'm the shortest one that's spoken tonight, so I'm gonna go this. First, go Bears. Yeah. Okay, we're spread out. Good evening, Hafede. My name is Meg Roberto, and I am incredibly, incredibly honored to be here tonight to introduce a phenomenal leader. But before I introduce him, I just wanted to call out I am also deeply humbled to be before all of you, because not only have I seen the spirit and the wonderfulness that is all of you, I've seen all of the gratitude that you bring in this room. And I've seen how much of your communities are represented because you are a representation of them. And I have no doubts that the journey that you will take over the next 4 years, 6 years, 10 years as you get your PhD will be utterly phenomenal. And in Chamorro culture, which is how I identify, we always call upon our ancestors and we recognize the phenomenal feats that they accomplished before we actually get to this point. So for a second, I would like you to recognize your ancestors with me because they are very much a part of why you are here. So now to my real job. It is my honor to introduce a phenomenal Pacific Island leader, Iosefa Aina, also known as Sefa. He is one of the foremost leaders in our community, basically kind of like our Michael Jordan in the academic, education, and service world. He is so phenomenal that he was appointed to the Commission on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders by President Obama as he served as vice chair. He is also currently Pomona College, serving as the Pomona, I know you're here. And he is serving as the Dean and Associate Director of the Asian American Resource Center. But his roles and responsibilities do not stop there. As a founding member of EPIC, which is Empowering Pacific Islander Communities, so using your social media, you can definitely tweet at them. He produced what is a groundbreaking report, the first ever demographic report that allows us to actually shed light on the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. For oftentimes we are overlooked, we are not a part of the conversation, and we are often lumped together in many different ways into the model minority myth. So because of this report, people now know that our dropout rates are equivalent to many other groups that are sitting in this room, that we suffer from cancer at high rates, so our partnership with ACS is incredibly important, and that there are so many other things that limit the ability for Pacific Islanders to attain an excellent education in this nation. So, While his accomplishments are many, there is a Samoan proverb that I think fully encapsulates and also calls on to the theme that is Iosefa, and it goes like this: the path to leadership is through service. Incredibly simple, but it very much encapsulates who Iosefa is as a person, and I am so humbled to introduce him to you all tonight. So please welcome him to the stage.
What's up? How's everyone doing? Man, there's some good looking people in this room. A lot of good hair in this room. But you know how important that is. Good hair is very important. You know, it ain't easy to do this. I thought, man, I'm gonna go over here and show them what's up, show them about my locks, and then I'm looking around the room like, man, I need to step my game up over here. But I'm sitting next to Dr. Lomax, so I might be all right for a little while. I'm just playing, brother. I'm just playing. I have, it's gonna be one of those nights. You guys didn't get dressed up in your college stuff for nothing. But, before we get into what I want to talk about, I do want to, sort of build on the previous speakers, particularly Meg. Thank you, Meg, in acknowledging those people who are native to this region. The Ohlone, the Miwok, the Patwin, the Yokuts. I think we get caught up in our conversations. Today we'll get caught up in these conversations. Tomorrow and over the weekends we'll speak about problems, and hopefully we'll also speak about solutions. Most of the times through this lens of civil rights, but not really understanding and not fully grasping the human rights violations that Native people have suffered through and continue to suffer through in this country. And so as my Native Hawaiian Ohana have taught me, many of whom have been physically displaced from their ancestral homes, we mustn't forget that our privilege sometimes comes at the cost of displacement of others. So remember that as you move forward. I also want to give some special shout outs to the wonderful folks here at UNCF, Gates Millennium Scholars Program, particularly Dr. Michael Lomax, for your wonderful guidance over the last 10 years. I was talking with him over dinner, and I said, this is a beautiful room. This is an amazing room. I don't think I've ever been in a room like this. I don't think we have very many blonde-haired people in this room. Not that blonde, my wife has blonde hair, she's awesome. Just in case she's gonna catch wind of this somehow. I think, this beautiful room. There's a lot of richness, there's a lot of diversity, and there's a lot of what we call mana, spirit, in our community. Also, Mr. Larry Griffith of the UNCF, thank you so much for the warm invitation to speak with you tonight. I also want to acknowledge the wonderful staff who've been running around like chickens with their heads cut off. I was in a room downstairs and some students were stuck in San Francisco and they were trying to get them onto a train, and they say the revolution will not be televised. Yeah, it happens in those rooms down there. Someone else did this. Dr. Lomax didn't do this. He didn't make sure you got on that plane. He just took pictures of you. But this is the work of many, many people. And many, many people sweated. Many, many people cared enough to put in those long hours. And so I want to thank them, because I know many of them haven't slept in a couple days, and they won't sleep for a couple more days. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to my sister, Meg Roberto. Dankulu Nasius Mase. Thank you, my sister. That Samoan proverb that you mentioned earlier, it goes like this: the path to leadership is through service. The path to leadership is through service. And you exemplify that through your actions. And I agree with Dr. Lomax, you have to. If you're gonna be consistent and congruent with your cultural values, if you're gonna be consistent and congruent with the country's values, you have to be accountable to one another, and to especially those who are not fortunate enough to be here with us today. O Lauingoa, o Iosefa Fa'amaini Aina. My father is Savea Alepaka, Liunga Alua Aina, from the village of Itiuta, the island of Manua. It's beautiful, huh? My mother is Lieutenant Pulu Faivai, from the village of Awa, island of Tutuila, in American Samoa. Now there's another Samoan proverb that helps me gain some perspective of who I am and what my mission is in life. Aside from Leala, Lepule, Letautua, the path to leadership is through service, I also take into account this one saying that's really profound to me. Namato tutu la au mai nei. Namato tutu la au mai nei. On this journey to where we are today, we've rested under many trees. We've rested under many trees. Trees that have given us sustenance, that have provided shelter, clothing, food, life itself. Those trees are our ancestors. Those things go back, they predate Christianity, they predate colonization of our islands. This is the logic, this is the epistemology, this is the way our people think. Namato tutu la au mai nei. In your pathway to where you are today, you have rested under many trees. And I know that's true for many of you here today. And I agree with everything the doctor was saying earlier about how fortunate you are to have these scholarships. But I know this. The Gates Millennium Scholars Foundation needs you just as much, if not more, than you need them. They need you to be successful so that our democracy, that our country can be as strong as it can be. They need you to succeed so that we can continue to lead the world, to be the bastion, be the light for the rest of the world of how things can be done. So it's important that you guys do that, do your work, but recognize that you guys, he may pay the bills, but you do the work. I mean, it's a nice check, I'm sure it is. I mean, I never got one, but you know, I'm pretty sure it's cool. But you guys, I have no doubt that you do the work. And the other thing that I don't doubt is whether or not you would have gotten the Gates Millennium Scholar or any other scholarships, you would have still been doing the work. And that's important to understand. That is important to understand. Because many of you come from communities where you've had to survive and overcome. Your life story is the dream of all college publications. They want to throw your face on the front. They're like, look at this kid. I remember when Harvard said, you know, any child whose parents makes less than $50,000 will get a free Harvard education. I said, well, that's not the trick. The trick is having your parents make less than $50,000 and qualifying to get into Harvard. That's the trick. That kid who does that is a unicorn. And in this room, we have a bunch of unicorns. This is where my family's from. This is where my narrative begins. This is where my perspective starts and ends. Well, it doesn't end. Hopefully it doesn't end soon. I'm kind of young and got young kids. But I grew up in another place, San Diego. Have you got any folks here from San Diego? Yeah, what's up? San Diego. The public persona of San Diego is very sterile. You've seen it on, what's that MTV show? Well, no, I'm dating myself. Real World. Do they still have that show? Anyways. This is what San Diego is to a lot of folks who've never been to San Diego. That's the Hotel Del Coronado. It's a world famous hotel. Me and my cousins used to drive over there and sneak into the swimming pool and until they saw, you know, hair was a little thick. Like, what are you doing here, man? I want to have fun too. But that's San Diego. So when I went, and I'm proud to say that I'm from San Diego, even though my parents, my family, my lineage stretches back through Oceania, through Samoa, by way of Hawaii, I call San Diego home. But this is the San Diego I grew up in. It was a little different because my perspective was a little different. How I grew up was a little different. It was very interesting. And I know that many of you have grown up in very interesting places as well. This is what it meant to live in San Diego for me. I lived 20 minutes north of Tijuana. I lived near Chicano Park. So I saw the wonderful murals, the wonderful artwork, and unfortunately, some of the violence that exists in our community. And that helped to shape my perspective of life. I grew up in a section of San Diego called Southeast San Diego. Some of you guys have grown up in very similar areas. And because San Diego has extreme wealth, you know that usually what accompanies that is extreme poverty. I mean, who's gonna mow your lawns? Who's gonna pick up your trash? Who's gonna take care of your babies? Who's gonna make your food? Somebody's gotta do it. I grew up in this area, Southeast San Diego. That's a shot from my backyard. This is how I went through life. And for me, what was important, in order for me to succeed, I had to shut a lot of this out. I couldn't listen to every siren. I wasn't gonna trip every time the ghetto bird light was flashed in my backyard. I can't do that. Can't be jumpy. You can't be nervous. Nobody likes nervous people. I'm like, man, take your nervous ass home. You can't play with us. Go home, you're gonna tell on somebody. You had to numb yourself to these things so that you could focus on what you wanted to do, on wanting to get out of that. This is like a landmark in San Diego. I said, oh, I live by Green Cat. Everybody knows. That's like old school GPS, Green Cat liquor store. Right around the corner from Green Cat. This was our landmark. You see these things in many of our communities. You see these things all over our communities. And you ask yourself, well, who's benefiting from this? Because obviously we're not. Obviously our communities are not. If you extrapolate sort of where the funding goes, where the profits go, much of it goes outside of the community into the pockets of other people. Many people profit off the misery of the people in our communities. An old school term for that was poverty pimping. People would name your pain, write a grant, and get paid. Or they'd find out what your addiction is and sell it to you. Now, fortunately, a lot of us, we're aware of that. We know what that looks like. If you're like me, I'm the 8th of 9 children, the first one to go to college, then many of your siblings and many of your relatives have fallen victim to that kind of stuff. They don't know why things are so messed up. They just want to shut it all down, so they medicate themselves. They medicate themselves. And because where I grew up was kind of bad, I went to a school in another city. It's called National City. It's even further south. This was supposed to be the nicer suburbs, but I went from a predominantly, blood area to a predominantly SA area. A lot of Mexican gangs in this area. So it was, pick your poison. But I grew up in this area. Well, we like to call it Nasty City. I'm sure all of you have nicknames for the towns you grew up in. It wasn't as nice and colorful as it is on the commercials. This guy right here, my very first best friend in kindergarten, Owen B. Gay, native kid. Very best friend. I don't know if you guys could tell from the picture where he's at, but he's locked up. My very best friend. First kid whose house I went to who wasn't my relative. Kid I grew up with. This is another one of my cousins. His little brother's doing life for murder. he and I are the same age. He still lives that life. So my upbringing was a little weird. Because on the one hand, it was very urban, but it was also very fob. I don't know if you guys know what the term fob is. It's fresh off the boat. So that's my mom there on the left. My mom was wicked, man. She would show up to school with that on. And I'd be like, oh, come on, Mom, you're killing me with that. So now I'm gonna have to fight. Someone's gonna say something and I'm gonna have to fight. But she was fierce, man. You couldn't tell her nothing. She knew who she was. She wasn't trying to be someone else. And I know in the back of her mind, she was always disappointed in the fact that I was trying to hide part of my identity. I'm not a fob, I'm Samoan. And you are too, boy. She was fierce. Everybody, you know, folks here have a reference for The Rock. My mom was like The Rock. Those are her proverbs. Know your role and shut your mouth. I was like, my mom is a wrestler. It doesn't matter what you think. I'm like, wow. My mom would say that to me all the time. And that eyebrow that's the church eyebrow. You know, I'd be sitting on one half of the church, she'd be the other half, she'd look over and raise the eyebrow. You knew you were gonna get beat up after church. You're like, yeah, I don't wanna get beat up after church. That was all cultural. I tell The Rock, man, you gotta give it up, man. You making money off of us. And my mom made that stuff up. I'm sure your mom made up some pretty interesting things too. But you know, it was a mixture of being urban and being ethnic and cultural. People would say, oh, ghetto fab. We were ghetto fobs, ghetto fabulous, ghetto fabulous. You know, fish heads. I mean, you know, you couldn't go to school with any lunches because kids would be like, what the hell is that? What are you eating, man? And this ain't no ordinary crowd. Like, it ain't like everybody's eating pate or whatever. We're all on free lunch. But even they were like, damn, what is that? Now you know you're stuck when all your free lunch friends are clowning on your food and your mom's clothes. You're like, oh my God, I can't win, I gotta get out of here. But that's how I left home like that. I left home like that. And the place I went to was Annapolis. I went to the United States Naval Academy. Now there's an interesting story behind that, and I don't have the time to get into, but the US military played a very strategic role in sort of colonizing islands in the Pacific: Hawaii, Guam, American Samoa, the Philippines. And so the opportunity to have their child become a naval officer. In my mom's time and my father's time, growing up in the islands when they did, and coming of age when they did, the governor of the island was appointed by the US Navy. It was always an admiral. And my mom would always say, oh, son, you're gonna wear one of those white uniforms. I was like, whatever, you know. I didn't grow up in an island. I had opportunities to play football at USC, the University of Utah, University of Hawaii. I had opportunities. And I was trying to hide from the recruiter because I knew as soon as he came to my house, I was using one of those fake addresses. As soon as he came to my house, I knew it was over. But it was over. My parents wanted me to go there, and I tried to please them, and so I went. And it was no bueno. It was not on and cracking for me there. I thought I was going to play football, and apparently I had to join the military too. So, you know, with all my hair, I'm like, man, I'm not doing this, you know? You're taking my mana away. And so I came back home after completing plebe summer and dropping out of school, and I came back home and it was as if the pause button was pushed. I came back home to the porch. People were just chilling, drinking, waiting for nighttime to come to do something, anything. People playing spades and dominoes in the garage, just hanging out. It's as if my time away was just time frozen at home. And it was interesting to me because I'd never felt that before. I thought, wow, you guys really aren't doing anything around here. And so after a year of searching, soul searching, I decided I need to get out of San Diego. And my girlfriend, who is now my wife at the time, was going to UCLA. So this is where I ended up. That's what's up. I'm gonna leave that up there for a while. For the rest of the talk, I'm gonna leave that up there. I'm just playing. It's all good, you know. They don't care about us. It's, you know, it's just a school. But anyways, I went to UCLA, and that changed my life. When I first got there, it was during Indigenous Peoples Week. This right here, this is the postcard sort of look of the college. But right out front of this area, there was a group of Native performers. And I was kind of maybe a quarter mile away, but you could hear the drumming. And you know, growing up in San Diego, very hyper-patriotic, very conservative, I thought, oh man, they're celebrating Columbus. This is 1991, you know, so we were less progressive back then. This was 1991. And so I thought, well, it's Columbus time. All right, let's go over there and hear the story again and sing the song and all that. You know, the schoolhouse rock stuff that we grew up on. And as I get closer, I start to see what it really is. There are mock tombstones with different population demographics facts on there. With first contact, this many natives. After 10 years, less than half of that. After 15 years, and so on and so forth. And then there's fake blood, and the scene was of a massacre. And I remember walking through that, and I can still, it's very vivid to me, because in a place that's look at that, it's nice. As pristine as that, my image was messed with a little bit. It was challenged a little bit. Because everything I had been told up to that point, this was before everyone in high school got to read Howard Zinn. We didn't get to read that till you got to college. Blasphemous. They didn't let you in on the secret until you got to college. But everything I had been told up to that time, this was not what it was. And so for me, it was interesting because I remember feeling at some point, this makes more sense to me than anything I've ever been told. I remember not thinking, wow, this is not history as I know it. I remember thinking, man, if I don't know this, then what else do I not know? Not just about the narrative and the history of this country, but also the narrative and the history of my own life, of who I am, and how that narrative has been crafted, how that narrative has been used against me and my community, and how I need to challenge that. Before I went to college, I used to think I got into college in spite of who I was. But after a couple of years at UCLA, I realized it was because of who I was. It was those values that my mom taught me. So I saw that, but I was still kind of on my journey. I was still looking. I pulled this off of the website. UCLA was an interesting place. I mean, it was really interesting. It was a very racialized experience for me. I didn't understand why there was so much segregation, why people hung out in their own groups. I just kind of knew that it was. I didn't know what it was about that made me want to look for other people who looked like me. But after a couple of days in Westwood, I was like, what the hell? Where are my peoples at? They were on the football team. It was hard to deal with because I had worked hard to get to a place like this. And my assumption was, when I got there, everyone was going to be too smart for that. The simple-mindedness of racism. Everyone was going to be above that. We're all smart. We're all scholars. Skittles would fly from the sky. That's how awesome we were. But it wasn't. And I struggled with that a little bit. But I also took advantage of it to figure out who I was, to dive deeper into myself, to understand all the things that I thought I knew, I really didn't have much knowledge for. Only until you understand who you are can you identify, can you recognize the struggles of other people. Back in the early 90s, there were no Pacific Islander Studies classes, so the classes that really resounded to me, the ones that really resonated with me, were African American Studies classes, Chicano Latino Studies classes, Women's Studies classes. Because I get that, I understand that. That makes more sense to me than the other stuff I was told. It felt like I was being talked to. It felt like my experiences were validated. What was also true was now my experiences were connected with experiences of other people. And it wasn't just about color. It was about power and powerlessness. It's about becoming empowered as a person, as a citizen, finding your voice. Now we have to be careful because it's a very thin line, and I was talking to the doctor about this earlier. There's a very thin line between being empowered and being entitled. And for me, I went to college without that entitlement because no one ever gave me anything. You want it, you work for it. So you had savvy. Well, UCLA, this is before the Gates program. Parking was like a racket. It's still that way. So for like a semester or a quarter of parking, back in 1991 was like $100. I'm like, $100? Now it's a lot. Back then it was ridiculous. But the funny thing about UCLA is everyone had convertibles. And no one ever put the top up. So these cars be parked in the parking lot. I'm walking through the parking lot and it's dangling here and dangling there. I'm like, oh shit, let me grab one of these. I'm not condoning that because you get a scholarship, you can buy you one. But I had to stay there. I had to stay there. I said, I'm not gonna go home over no parking permit. Every time I had a book that I needed to purchase that was just ridiculously expensive, I would purchase it, wait for my boss to go home from my work-study job, and Xerox the whole thing. Take it back to the bookstore the next day and say, sorry man, I got the wrong book. Savvy. Now some people go to college with a certain level of cultural capital, social capital that will help to enhance their college experience. And for many people of color, for many first-gen people, we don't have that same opportunity. Not in very explicit ways, but this is why I want to talk to you about perspective. Because when I look back on that time, when I look back through what got me through, it were those things that I learned growing up in San Diego. You gotta be persistent. You gotta stay tough. You always gotta struggle. Struggle is normal. No one's gonna give you anything. You gotta work. So I went to college with a wealth of social and cultural capital because I knew those things, that savvy, that moxie. I knew how far I had to come in order to achieve the same things that other people were achieving who didn't come so far. Every time I got a financial aid check, I would send that money home. The doctor talked about feeling guilty about going to college. That was me. I felt guilty the whole time. I felt like I should be at home earning money for my family. So I sent it all home. And I had some roommates who said, what are you doing? That's your money. My family needs this more than me. But that taught me sacrifice. There's another Samoan proverb, the person who stands in front of you, this person who stands before you is not more important than the people who stand behind them, who support them, who have lifted them, who pray for them. My grandmother didn't speak any English, but always tried to slip me a $5 every time she got her Social Security check. And then my mom would wait for her to leave and then she'd snatch it out of my hands. Give me that money. I'm going to bingo with that. My mom was a gangster, man. I'm like, bullying. Come on, man. But college changed that for me. It was a moment to reflect. you know? But to be, one of the first things that tripped me out when I got to college was this, squirrels. Right? Can you identify with that? See, these are my peoples. You know what I'm talking about. There was just a lot of squirrels running around. I'm like, what the hell? It's like a Disney movie in here. You know, I mean, I'm city folks, you know what I mean? I might have come from an island, but I grew up in San Diego, so anything that wasn't on a leash, I'm like, man, that thing might kill me. Well, these squirrels were tripping me out because the ones at UCLA were very ornery. They come right up on you and snatch your stuff. Just like, man, that's cold-blooded. It's a lot of squirrels, right? And then there's this, the sculpture garden. And this place, it's in the middle of campus. This is beautiful. It's right outside the film and television school. It's a beautiful place. Every Monday, Hare Krishnas used to come and not sell food, they would give away food. I don't know, it was kind of nasty because they made it in buckets and they just kind of handed it out like, oh, I don't know about all that. You know, I'm sure that's cool with y'all, but I'm good. Maybe I'm too colonized for that, you know what I mean? I want to see some vendor cards. I want to see some food handlers cards here. I've been colonized, man. It ain't my fault. It happened before I was born. But this is the place, man. It was like hippie style in here. You know what I mean? It's, you know, inappropriate statues everywhere, and everybody was trying to pretend like them people weren't naked. And I'm like, well, they're naked. And one day, me and my wife, my girlfriend, were sitting in there, and we were just having lunch, you know. And in college, I used to, you know, my hair was braided, this was braided, and I had the look, you know what I mean? I had that look. And it was interesting because that look became more defined when I got to college. Because I felt so out of place. I felt so not normal that I decided to go the other way with it. So if that were preppy and sophisticated and, you know, English was all right, you know, then I was going to go the other way with it. And I was going to become this dude. Part of it was, you know, this was how I grew up. And so I remember sitting there with my wife and this guy walking by, you know, a normal guy, wasn't really thinking about me. I was thinking about him until we locked eyes. And then I'm just staring at him. I'm mad dogging him through the sculpture garden. And he looks at me and he just looks away like, what is this guy staring at? And my wife is like, what are you tripping on? What is wrong with you? Perspective. Then I stopped and I looked, like, man, there are statues and squirrels, nice buildings, water fountains. What am I tripping on? I started to realize I was a product of the environment that I grew up in. I had to survive a certain way to get to a certain place in my life. And it had served me. And I didn't realize how much of that was forced upon me. That doesn't give you respect, staring someone down till they look away. You're the only one who can give yourself that. It doesn't come from being bigger or stronger or having more money. It comes from within. And that, thank you. And so after my time as a student at UCLA, I was fortunate enough to also start teaching there. I taught ethnic studies course, Pacific Islander experience courses, community engagement courses. And my number one goal was to get students off campus and into the community. Because if all you did was stay on campus, you are always going to feel marginalized. Relatively speaking, to the wealth and the disparity that exists between the privileged, you will be marginalized. But understand this, you still have privilege. You're at UCLA, you're not in Iraq. You're at UCLA, you're not at home. You're not in a factory. You're in Westwood. Come on, man. Skittles are gonna fly out of the sky pretty soon. But you have to realize that. And too many of our kids weren't feeling comfortable enough on campus despite the beauty, despite how it looked, despite how welcoming some people were. You always felt out of place. You always felt like this didn't feel right. Because in relatively speaking, you can feel marginalized in that space. Parts of your identity will be marginalized in that space. You might be the only woman in an engineering class, the only person of color in certain classes. You might be the only gender nonconformist in certain classes, when people don't respect your preferred gender pronouns. People are always going to feel that way in this space. And so it was important for us to get off and remind ourselves that we're here to do a job. We're here to make sure that the sacrifices of our elders, Mr. Gates' money, is going to help to heal our community and improve our democracy. It's going to teach us how to be philanthropists. First you serve with your time, your energy, and your sweat, and then you serve in other ways. But this is how you learn how to do this. It's always important to have perspective. So now I work at a place called Pomona College. You have Pomona College people in here? What's up, man? And guess what they got at Pomona College? They got more buildings, they got statues, and then they got like advertisements for student life. And they have squirrels too. And you know what's interesting about Pomona College? Because when I first got there, I thought, man, I need to get the hell out of here. I couldn't believe the entitlement. I mean, these kids were asking for stuff I didn't even know you could ask for that. I just couldn't. It was a certain level of discomfort. It was I would say kind of a meanness about their intellectuality. I've always felt like being an intellectual is a gift. It's not something you use to make other people feel stupid. Because if you do that, you're no better than the big person who beats up on little people. You can whip people with whatever power you have if you choose to do so. And I saw too much of that, intellectual snobbery. And it wasn't from the general student body, it was from our progressive kids, which pissed me off even more. Like, Jesus Christ, how do you talk like that? Why do you talk like that? There's no forgiveness, there's no humility. And so I wanted out. But I'm glad I stayed. Because at the end of the day, they're young people. They're forming their identities. And it's about having the right kind of mentors, having the right kind of people in your lives to tell you, you need to stop acting like that. Or give them the people's eyebrow. Or tell them to know your role and shut your mouth. I don't do that. We don't do that at this school. But it's a beautiful place because it has a lot of resources and it's got a lot of wonderfully talented young people. Extremely smart, extremely gifted young people. We do community programs, one with the local Tongan community. Every Saturday we bring these kids, 30 Tongan kids from as young as 4 and 5 years old to as old as 22, 23 years old. We bring them onto campus. Man, it's a beautiful thing when you see them. Everybody's like, man, did Pomona get a football team? Nah, they don't got a football team. They got a football team, but we won't talk about their football team. But what I see in those eyes of the young people is that they're not going to walk through life feeling like, in spite of who they are, they're going to succeed. Instead, they're going to see that at a very young age, they've demystified the barriers that many of our people in our community have existed with. They're going to feel normal walking onto campus. They're going to feel normal anytime a squirrel runs by them. More normal than I was. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to succeed. And it doesn't just have to be at Pomona College. And I'm grateful to Pomona College because it's a school that has enough resources where we can pay to feed them. You know, and we have another program that works with Southeast Asians in downtown LA, and before we started getting a budget together for that, my students they have these green containers, these to-go containers. They're like eco-friendly containers. So we would have staff meetings on Friday, and then after our staff meetings, everybody would go up and fill up their containers and then take that food to downtown LA. Now, what are they going to do with it? Throw it away? And I remember mentioning that to the dean, and the dean was like, "Ooh, don't do that." It's like, why not? I'm teaching them. Be resourceful. You don't need a Gates Millennium Scholar to help people. You got a green bucket of green to-go container, put some cookies in there. Take it down there. See what that does. You feed them like the Black Panthers fed people, and maybe they'll open up to you. So it seems like a simple thing, but I'm blessed to be at a place like Pomona where we can do that. And engaging in the community has been a powerful tool, and one that I would have done regardless of any opportunities that came from it. But one such opportunity was working with this guy. It was a blessing. It's been a blessing. Yeah, I have my Jerry curl on. You guys see that? I didn't know he was coming, man. I was like, man, I have time to do my hair. It was freaky. It was a moment. Surreal. I'm that kid that grew up by Green Cat Liquor. I know where Green Cat Liquor is. Fish heads, all of that. All the homies. Gangsters, cousins, all of them. They were just proud of you, brother. Proud of you. You represent us. You are there for us. Namato tutula au maine. We've helped to provide shelter and shade for you to get where you are. And we are proud of you, my brother. And I appreciated every single one of those comments. I had to delete some of them because, they're watching my email and stuff now. But this was a blessing. A lot of people would. Thank you. So, of course, these things turn into memes, and a lot of the homies start writing things, and somebody was like, man, George Washington looked pissed off at you guys right there. George Washington is wondering, why aren't y'all cleaning up? What are you doing standing there? Unfortunately for me, this happened about 5 months after my mom had passed away. And I did everything for her. I do everything for her. And I know you all have those people in your lives. Living for other people, that's a beautiful thing. Your education sometimes tells you it's about you, the individual, but it's not. It never is. It never is. It's about us as a community. So the things that you do have to live on for other people. You have to make space. You have to open up opportunities so that everybody can believe in the dream. Because after all, this is a dream. This country, this democracy, it's an idea. That's what it is. And if people don't believe in it, then it won't work. And too many of our people have turned it off because for too long it hasn't worked for them. So it's your job, your obligation, to show them from your community, your brothers and sisters, your cousins, your relatives, that this works. Now, I'm not going to say that Skittles will come from the sky and, but my kids are better off than I was. My last thing on perspective is one day I'm pulling out of the back of out of my garage and taking my kids to school, and my kids start screaming, Dad, wait. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? It's like, oh, there's a duck and a bunny rabbit in our driveway. There's a duck pond down the street, and the neighbor has bunnies that had babies in there everywhere. And I was thinking to myself, man, I grew up around Green Cat Liquor Store. These kids got bunny rabbits and ducks. I don't want to hear shit. You better go to college. Thank you.
Stare. Don't anywhere. Because I have a squirrel for you.
It's a squirrel.
It's a squirrel in there.
There's a squirrel in there.
There's a squirrel in there.
Nobody gets that,
Years from now when I see you, there's going to be a squirrel in there.
That's all I remember from college is squirrels. I don't remember anything else.
What an incredibly wonderful journey you've taken us on tonight in the way that you've opened yourself and shared with this community. Thank you. What a fantastic start to the rest of the weekend. And on behalf of the entire Gates Scholars community, and certainly the Gates Scholars Class of 2014, we're so pleased to give you a small token of appreciation. I know that there will be some scholars who will want to have some time with Iosefa, but so to get you off to your next step in the evening, we're going to invite you to come back up. There are a few announcements, some housekeeping things, and then we're going to break. We will need you guys to move on to the next session, but Iosefa will be around for some quick hellos, and then we'll invite you guys to go on. Thank you.
Just one more round of applause for Iosefa. Yeah. So, it's been a long evening. You all have traveled. You are probably a little bit tired, I know, but I need you to turn your listening ears on. Dr. Lomax noticed I was a teacher before. We're gonna snap through this, we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna get through logistics so we can have the fun part, which is going to be some Survivor. Some of you will get voted off an island. Don't worry about it. Okay? Not to make you scared. Anyway, first and foremost, we have a GMS office. If you lose anything or if anything, you find anything, it's on the second floor over by the bank of elevators that you have, and that is where you go up to your room. So not this elevator here, but on the other side. So do your part. If you see somebody leave something, bring it there or go find the things that maybe you have lost. The second part is that it's really important to wear your name badge. We want to know who you are. We want to be able to say your name. We want to know what college you're going to. All those things are incredibly important to us, but we cannot remember all 500 of you. So please help us. Also, on your name badge, if you're looking at it right now, if you want to take a quick look, I'm going to walk you through something very, very quickly. You have 3 codes on there. First and foremost, your team number for tonight's community building activity. That is the number 1 number, so you're going to recognize your team by that particular number. The second code is for your concurrent session tomorrow. So when you break out into concurrent sessions, you're going to be with different people. That's the other reason why you need to have your name tag, because you need to have that with you so you can remember. In the case of an emergency, by the way, the meeting room or the meeting location is in the front parking lot, so we always prepare and always make sure that you do not leave anyone behind, but always meet in that parking lot. Also, scholars, I know you're incredibly bright, you're incredibly gifted. Please read the signs about where you're not supposed to be. That is also known as the pool. That is also known as other doors. So please don't let me catch you find out there like getting a tan or any of that kind of stuff. You need to be inside here. Last but not least, or actually second to last, is that you know who your roommate is by now, or you will find out at some point. Please do not leave without your roommate. Act like an ohana, act like family. You are a part of a family. If you see that person sleeping, I know it can be awkward, wake them up and bring them down with you, okay? Everybody understand that? Okay, and if you're the person sleeping, be gracious that they actually woke you up and didn't leave you behind. Next, it happens all the time, and I know there are a few of you that are already thinking about it. You're gonna go to the first level, and you're going to go to the Bayshore room. This is gonna be a fun activity. There are lots of people who are here who are going to lead you through it. So please go down, it's on the first floor, and I think it's over to the right, correct? The Bayshore, where you're all checking in over on that area. And last but not least, so we talked about that social media. Dr. Lomax brought that up, that social media, that tweeting and all of these other things. We have a phenomenal contest. It's to basically promote what our application and when it is closing. And to do that, what we need you to do is basically start taking videos, some pictures, and tagging it to the hashtag. Does anyone know what the hashtag is? Were you told? Someone got it. They had that. So it's hashtag GMS CLC 14. It's up there on the, if you didn't read it over there, resourcefulness. We just talked about it. Somebody had the answer. It's all about promoting your experience here. When we share our stories, you excite others. You lead by example. We were talking about this earlier and how it means to really share this moment with other people, and the way that we can do that and to promote scholarships and the close of the application, which is coming up, is to keep those photos. Lucky enough for you, in the videos that you will be posting using that hashtag, there are some mentors and alumni who are going to judge the best videos, and the winners will be announced on Sunday. So it is a competition. I really hope the Bears win it. Bring it home for us, right? Stanford's looking at me like you guys are you going to be angry about it? Stanford, have you heard it? So that is the last of the announcements. I'm sorry, this was very logistical. I wish you lots of luck. Please get down there safely, don't stampede, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.